When women rise, communities thrive. Climate justice is not just about the planet. It's about the power of women leading change, shaping solutions, and securing a just future for all. Those are the words of our guest today. Hamira Kobusingye, a climate justice advocate, whose voice speaks not only for the environment, but for the people most affected by its destruction. This is the East African Perspective. I am Musanjifu Benjamin Kavubu, alongside my co-host Thomas Lesafe. Today's episode is about climate justice, but we must begin with truth. Africa did not cause a climate crisis, yet today it is Africa, particularly East Africa, that is asked to sacrifice the most. Our forests, our rivers, our oil reserves, our women's labor are being negotiated in the global spaces we didn't build, under the rules we didn't write. We are told to abandon fossil fuels when we have barely lit our homes. We are urged to skip industrialization and to leapfrog into green economies without the infrastructure that is needed. We don't have the finances or the equity to do all this. And now, even the climate responses are becoming a new frontier of control, a green form of imperialism, where laws, conditions, narratives are written far from the soil that suffers this continent. But not everyone is silent. And our guest, Hamira Kobusingye, is not just responding, she's shaping the climate conversation. As a founder of Climate Justice Africa, she stands at the intersection of gender, justice, and climate policy. She fights for a future where African voices do not beg for solutions, but they are designing the solutions. She's putting Africa to the table and in the spaces where we were not in the past. In this episode, we are going to look at how colonialism affected our environment, especially with how settlers were benefiting or other colonialist population were benefiting from Africa's environment. We shall look at the present, where we shall look at what is happening in the region. We shall look at how the climate crisis is affecting everybody in the community, from women to children, and look at issues like ECOP, the East African Crude Oil Pipeline. And then we shall also try to look at how or where will East Africa be by 2050 when it comes to this topic. If we manage it or if we mismanage it, where are we most likely to be? So let's get into it. I will ask my co-host Thomas to say hello before Hamira comes in.
Hello everyone, thank you Hamira for being here. I'm really happy to have these conversations because most of the time, and at least at the beginning of the narrative of climate change, things were always put as climate is changing and we need to find solutions, almost like if we should not look at the past and why is climate changing. We cannot think of how to think of climate changing without thinking of climate justice. The East African perspective is also that perspective where we have been impacted by climate change, but also by climate imperialism, as you explained, also by green colonialism today, right? So we want to see how like all of that political economy comes together, and we're really happy to have a young guest here that can also tell us about how does she articulate this idea of climate justice, this idea that we do need some things need to be done in one hand for the future generations, but in the other end, there is climate change that we can't change and can't transfer anymore. So how do we bring climate change and climate justice together? That will be our topic, and I'm really happy to have our guest here. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Thomas. So, Hamira, I would ask you now to introduce yourself to our listeners and the audience.
Hi everyone, my name is Hamira Kobusingye. I am a climate and gender justice activist, and I am also the founder of Climate Justice Africa, or known as Yanai Haki Africa, an organization that is passionate about tailor-made solutions and passionate about bringing the information to the grassroots level and seeing that the grassroots and what our communities go through is amplified in the UN presence, and also on national level that our leaders get to focus on how we move forward and how we adapt to the changing climate, but also how we mitigate, how do we invest and grow as a region, how do we grow as a country. And today I'm actually very glad to be here with these very bright gentlemen, and I am glad that I get to talk about what I love most, justice for women and justice for the environment and climate justice, because historically climate change has been discussed. It has been a white man's talk and a white man's discussion. And right now we notice that it's our communities that are being impacted the most. It's our communities that are suffering the most. So it is, I'm very, very glad, and thank you guys, thank you gentlemen for inviting me here, that we get to talk about this at a regional level, at a country level here at home in Uganda, because granted I have spoken about these things, but not here at home. So I'm very glad to be here and I'm excited for this. So thank you very much, and yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction. I want you to tell us about the Bremen Solidarity Prize, Hamira, before we move on.
Thank you very much. The Bremen Solidarity Prize is a prize that is given by the Hain city of Bremen in German. It's in North German, and this prize is to show their solidarity for people trying to make a difference in the global south or in developing countries, and also people like us that are trying to fight against neo-colonialism and fight against the influence of white people in our countries, but also trying to fight for the betterment of our countries, of our communities, and of our people. And I received this prize as a climate and gender justice activist that was speaking up against pollution and transferred fossil fuel production in our communities and in our countries. But also, I am humbled to have been among the 18. I think this year we shall have the 19th Bremen Solidarity Prize winner. And I am humbled to be having been categorized in the category of Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela, that were the first laureates of this prize. And it showed me that I wasn't fighting alone, that there was a group of people and leaders that saw our work and are standing in solidarity with us. So every young person that is doing something, just know that you're not doing it alone. There's so many people that are doing it with you. And this is something that actually gave me courage to keep moving. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that means you are given that prize because you're doing important work. We hope the Nobel Committee in Oslo is watching. We have had an East African win the Nobel Peace Prize for their work on the environment. We hope you are in line for that too.
I think the first black woman that got a Nobel Prize, was she not Wangari Maathai?
Yeah.
It was definitely her, so definitely.
So I hope she's in line for that.
The topic is on the trend.
Yeah, so you have talked about neo-colonialism. Some people think this whole climate crisis, climate change is new. But Thomas, I want us to go back behind colonial times and see.
I think the dynamics that are being really interesting here is that it is colonialism that came in East Africa first to shape the environments for the need of a particular class, right? At the time, it was the class of settlers. It was the class of white settlers. But it has a direct environmental impact. And yes, it is not exactly the same as putting carbon on the atmosphere, but you need to imagine that in order to reach, for all the material that will build the infrastructure of colonialism, to reach Kenya, to reach Uganda, to reach Rwanda, it comes with the motor or the steam motor, right? And the steam motor was the very fast motor that extended the amount of carbon that humans would put in the atmospheres, right? So first, when the British colonized, they had to do it with steam motors, and that brings a lot of carbon to the atmospheres. In order to bring the tools of colonialism directly to the African continent. Within those tools of colonialism, they did transform and destroy the environment to not so much to destroy it as those are like just bad people or this is the devil trying to arrive somewhere and destroy everything. No, it was more to reshape the environment for their very own needs. And I think that's what has been really important to understand. When we understand climate change, we need to understand that climate has been changing mainly because the environment has been used for the purpose of one single class. And in East Africa, it was clear. It is really clear that East Africa did not benefit from clearing their land from trees and changing them by tea farms, right? In the tea farms, as Ngugi told us about the books that we have here, in those tea farms, East Africans were almost enslaved, right? And so the transformation of the environment was not just a transformation of the environment for the class of settlers. It was a transformation of a physical environment and a group of people that were, we can say, peasants, that has to become now workers of capitalism, right? So it changed the life of East African, it changed the life of the environment. Just few other elements. Colonialism came with new chemicals. A lot of new chemicals were introduced in the region, and those chemicals has destroyed biodiversity and has killed that biodiversity. So those chemicals have come in the region because of that colonial and imperialist periods. We also think of deep minings. You think of the mine of Jekamin in Congo. You think of the mines that produce the petrol of South Sudan, and you realize that towards the oil regions, you have the development of an infrastructure that is made for what? To extract value outside of this land, right? So transform the land and extract that values, right? And so Mombasa is a harbor that also has been developed like this. Dar es Salaam also has been developed like this. All the railways that would go from the lake to the coast, all of this has been developed. So the natural resources given by God to these regions can go outside. And in the process of taking it out, it creates all the carbons and the transformation that we observe today. So first, a settler's community, a settler clans and class that use the environment for himself, whatever he was creating safari so he can go and look at lions and be great, or if it was mining the copper of the Jekamin, they use the environment for the need of one class. And this have set how I think climate change is also perceived and how it has emerged. So my questions for our guest is that since we know that colonialism have shaped the direct environment of East Africans to make it profitable for settlers, when we look at the situation today, why should we care about that climate change if it is done by other people from overseas? Why is it that we should look at it and care for it the same way that people in New York or Paris should care for it?
Thank you very much. That's actually a very beautiful history, and I've learned a lot. Why do we care? Because there's something I have always spoken about, that when it comes to climate change, everything is interconnected. Like what is being done in New York is affecting what is happening in the Horn of East Africa right now. What was done in Germany and what is even whatever pollution is happening in UK is affecting what happens in Bududa with the landslides and in Kisoro with landslides and even the flooding we have. So when it comes to the climate crisis, I think also to bring a little bit in the worry of destroying the science, to bring a little bit of science in this. When we talk about climate change, what we're actually talking about is the ozone layer destruction. When God was creating this planet, he gave us the ozone layer that reflects with the sun, and when the rays and the heat comes to the planet, the ozone layer makes it able to actually live later on, which we have actually damaged immensely with the investment in coal, with industrialization, with fossil fuels, and over the years, this ozone layer has been destroyed. Now, why do we care? Because it is our region and our continent that is actually bearing the brunt of the climate crisis. And we're bearing this brunt, but we also do not have the capacity to actually adapt to the changing crisis. We don't have the capacity to even pay for when we have a crisis. Remember when Bududa, the floods in Bududa happened, we found ourselves borrowing money to deal with that crisis. And this is money that in turn affects our economy, and hence right now we have 1% in debt as a country of our GDP is in debt. So when we talk about the climate crisis, everything is interconnected. It affects which child goes to school, which community grows. It affects how much is the food prices, how much food are we producing, how much food are we delivering, how much food is dying in the soil, hence bringing about methane, which is another dangerous gas that also destroys the ozone layer. So we cannot say it's the people in the developed world or in New York who have actually destroyed this planet to take care of it, because when they do, they actually discuss things that benefit them and in ways that benefit them. And with that, I'm sorry, I'm jumping. I hope, but with that, we have seen that they're now shifting investment of fossil fuels to the continent. They're saying, okay, now we're not going to invest in gas, we're not going to invest in coal, we're not going to invest in fossil fuels like in crude oil, but we're going to come and export it from developing countries. Hence, shifting the burden of production to us, which leaves us to deal with the aftermath and the destruction that comes with it and the displacement that comes with it, and leaving them to benefit from the resources and the finances that are produced from these infrastructures. So it is needed for East Africans and young people and women to be part of the discussion on climate change and climate justice, because if you're not present, decisions will be made that are against you and against what benefits you as a nation, as a region, as a continent, but even as a community. We talk about tailor-made solutions. We have seen where things, a certain region needed food, they were going through starvation and a hunger crisis because of the drought, and they were sent iron sheets, but iron sheets weren't useful to them then. You get so that means that we need to be at the table to be like, okay, since you've said we are allocating this money, how much money is coming? Let's invest this money in A, B, C, D, and E instead of X, Y, Z, and that helps us to have a betterment in the community. It's a number-sum game of like you keep adding, like if my community is okay and your community is okay and his community is okay, that means we have 3 communities that are okay, and then we have a voice and we actually have betterment and we can adapt, and adaptation alone is not enough. We need to mitigate, we need to deal with loss and damage, we need to deal with all these things, but also we need to remember that as a continent we have actually emitted less than 4% of global CO2 emissions, and we're responsible for less than 4% of global CO2 emissions. But let's remember that this is Africa we're talking about, and this podcast is about East Africa. That means it's less than 1% for the whole of the region. So we are dealing with a brunt we actually did not cause. But actually, if we're not seated at the table where these discussions on climate change and negotiations are being taken, then they will say, oh, well, they're doing okay. Oh, well, then we'll have people that come here, take studies and go back.
But is it not also a contradiction to listen that much to the people that have produced the problems? Is that not also a contradiction? Because United Nations have said nothing about climate change until like the 80s and the 90s. Yet like all the carbon was emitted at the time, and we suffer from it now. So is there any time when you are into that process of negotiation where there is this idea that we are listening to the people that bring the problem to us are also the one that bring solutions? How does those negotiations happen on the ground?
So how at the UN centers, how negotiations happen is not how you're saying it's a group of negotiators coming on board to discuss a particular topic. For instance, there's global stocktake, there's adaptation, there's mitigation, there's technology, there's fossil fuels, which is just transition, and it's every country has a representative that they send to follow up on that particular thematic area. And when they follow up on this particular thematic area, then we as Uganda talk about what benefits us within our negotiation block. Now Uganda alone and Rwanda in East Africa and Sudan can negotiate with the LDC, least developed countries, and they can also negotiate with AGN. The African Group of Negotiators, and they can bring their stands in there to talk about, okay, this is where we stand on this topic as Uganda, this is what we want to see, this is how much we want to, because also the reason why these negotiations happen is to make sure that developed countries that benefited from industrialization and caused the existing climate crisis right now pay up
Because 80% of the carbon on the atmosphere come from those countries.
Yes, and hence that's why the Paris Agreement exists, because with the Paris Agreement, I think Article 9 talks about climate finance, where developed countries are supposed to provide $100 billion per year for developing countries to be able to adopt to the changing climate crisis.
Wait, we have just been told on the they don't do it, and it's been since Rio 1992 they don't do it.
Actually, we shall get back to that issue of financing, especially now Donald Trump coming back to office and pulling the United States out of the Paris Agreement. We shall come back to, because it is more broad and more complex on the financing.
Yes. But I'm sorry, I wanted to complete this because so when you talk about the UN system, it's not just that they are saying and we are listening. It's we are saying and we are all listening, because it's a unilateral decision. Like every present party in that conference has to agree. Even as civil society, we actually allowed to go through the documents and help on advising on how text should move and how text should be. You get. And my organization itself, if you go to our website, we write actually demands and policy papers on what we want to see in every COP. So it's not that we just go there and sit and listen to what the Global North is saying.
Definitely.
Though time and time they have played tricks and influenced how the decisions are taken. But it's a series of things being discussed. And at this point, with the rapidness and the fastness on how the climate is changing, this seems to be something we need so dearly. Yes, are they doing something wrong? Yes. Do we need to push them a little further? Do we need to be a little tough? Yes. Do we need to be stand our ground a little bit more? Yes. But we are moving forward to somewhere. We're going somewhere, because the United Nations is here to unite nations, and because climate change is a global problem, we cannot fight it as East Africa alone. We cannot fight it as Africa alone. We need the whole citizens of the globe to take part in this.
So, Hamira, you have been in the room. We have had these situations. For example, when it comes to the Nile, how the Nile, the amount of water in the Nile is dependent on the environment, especially where the source is. Now, how the Nile is used, and we go back to an agreement, a pre-colonial type agreement, and it gave most of the powers to Egypt. And actually, Sudan is not even allowed to do anything on the Nile, South Sudan, because they were not there when that agreement was being signed. So Egypt has research, Uganda has research, Ethiopia has research on the Nile. And they have clashed in the Nile Basin framework, and America has come in. Ethiopia says they would want to put a dam based on this research, so that we have enough energy for our economy to grow. Then Egypt says, if you put a dam, I won't have enough water. Then Ethiopia tells them, no, you will get water from Victoria. Then Egypt says, no, the water won't be enough. And they ask them why, saying that they present research, credible research from professors and institutions. How you have been in the room, how are such things dealt with when they are negotiating?
First of all, I'll come clean. I have not been to the water conference.
Yes, but
so I don't know how that is being discussed.
Yes, but there are those contentious issues. Especially, we did see
between states.
The developing,
states have conflicting interests, and then even if climate change does impact everyone, having more rain is not going to impact Sudan the same way that it could impact Uganda, which we are used to the rain.
That's very true.
When COP was happening, I think 29. People don't
29
follow.
was last year.
Yeah, people don't follow COP until there is a controversy. So the Global South representatives walked out at some point. What leads to those walkouts? That is what I'm trying to.
What leads to the walkouts?
Yes.
Every time we're at the COP grounds,
yes,
I represent my community.
Yes.
If you are you represent your community. He represents his community. So, granted, these selfish groups that have to actually understand that they are to blame. Yes. You understand?
Yes.
And so many times, because developed nations have power over developing nations, so many times, they have pulled strings and said this, ABCD. For instance, we need 1.4 trillion US dollars to deal with the loss and damage that has just been the past 10 years until now. That's what is needed to deal, like to compensate communities and countries that have incurred the worst cyclones, floods, landslides, droughts, everything that has costed lives, it has costed economies, it has costed development, it has costed children their lives, it has displaced people. You understand? We need $1.4 trillion. And when we're doing, last year was the finance COP and we're discussing global stock take. And with this $1.4 trillion, the countries that are liable to paying came and said, well, we can only give you 200 billion.
It's a very small portion of what is
there is science.
Yes.
There is science. There is research, like you said. There is evidence, like there is physical, pictorial, and video evidence of this happening and claiming lives.
There is also research and science in social science, and not just in the science of climate. And in social science, it has been quite clear that people act according to the interest of their groups. So waiting for the people that destroy to give us money, the money that they make from the environment itself, right? Because they're still making money from the environment.
Yes,
whatever it's gold, titanium, petrol, coal, we call it the way you want. It is always an environment that have been privatized, right? Someone has said, this is me and my own, and therefore whatever is taken is gonna bring me money. So now we're asking for those people that make money to give us a little bit of that money so we can patch up the issues that they have created. But their own role is to create those issues, to have that disturbance. There is no enrichment without using nature. Whatever nature means, like people workforce, so my force, my working force, or the farmers' working force, or the miners, or the tool that is taking from us the mineral we are looking for. They make money because they destroy our environment, right?
Yes.
And the very same people that destroy our environment, therefore, have made the most money.
That's true.
They have made the most money. We don't have those cell phones, we don't have those smartphones. There's no Apple, that the biggest company in the world, if there is no minerals in Congo and China, right? So it is also, in one end, I understand that we need to ask people to pay back the issue they have created, for sure. That's 100% sure. But in the other end, we should also have a plan B for if they don't do it, because they clearly don't do it. They clearly don't give the money that they are supposed to give, or that they say they will give. And it's been years and years we're having this conversation of Cyril Ramaphosa, Jacob Zuma, Thabo Mbeki. They all came and said, no, listen, you guys are producing the problems, you have to give us the money. It is also a contradiction. Still asking I just want our viewers to understand that if people are rich, if those class of people are rich, it is because at the first point they knew how to transform nature into capital and into money, and that money gave now them the power to define the objective, to define what is to be done.
They commodified the environment.
To commodify the environment. But us, what do we need? Do we need bridges on the Nile? Do we need the Nile to flow wild? Do we need the Nile, like the Lake Victoria, to raise up? So we have more water and we can sell it to people in Middle East that should give us some petrol?
So from the climate justice perspective, or from the climate perspective, like I said, it's us destroying the ozone layer, and how do we, what do we need? Before we even talk about finances, before we talk about the negotiations, we need to create more carbon sinks and reduce on the carbon sources. What you have talked about and what everyone is earning money from is the sources. There's so much things or sources of pollution and very little sinks where the pollution goes. The way God designed this planet is that we produce carbon, and then the trees with the land consume the carbon. The water with the coral reefs consume the carbon, and we only have two sinks. And which of these things we have contaminated River Nile, we have contaminated Lake Victoria, we have really treated these
We have
water bodies. Our
forests
forests have disappeared. Oh my goodness, I grew up knowing Hamira as the biggest forest in the country, and right now it has disappeared. And yeah, and all these things, even the swamp areas, even the places that had swamp, the wetlands that could consume. Yes,
to a large
but
level.
but the way God created this planet is, it's a recyclable thing. Like,
Yes, it can replenish
like these
itself.
places were supposed to consume, but we have built in the places we were supposed to, the swamps that were supposed to take in the CO2. We have cut down the trees for timber and put sugarcane plantations there. We need to also check ourselves as a region. We need to think about the future of our children and our children's children if we want this planet to even survive a little bit more. Also, as I say that, I think we should remember that we're going to be the first species to destroy the planet as human beings because of our overconsumption and over investment in fossil fuels and quick energy. But also, when I say that, it means we also have to check on our lifestyles. How do we live? What do we need to change? Who do we put in power? Because we have put people in power that don't think about us and think about how much they get on a particular deal. And here we have people negotiating deals that don't make financial sense or economic sense. They don't make environmental sense. They do not make even something as simple as social sense of employing populations.
But they make TikToks. The mineral that we extract from Congo make TikTok shorts, which is exactly what you are watching right now.
But you see...
No, let me ask the question, because I think it's a really key question. You said it brings consumptions. Are we ready? Are we ready, as we speak here in East Africa, to say, no, we do not want MacBook anymore, we do not want smartphone anymore, we are going to communicate with other technologies because we do not want the environment to be impacted more, when we do know that 80% of all that drama is coming from people buying laptops and smartphones way before it was available here? What do we do? Like, are young East African really ready to stop using certain new technology?
I want to come on something.
Again, I'm going to go political a bit.
You have to. You can.
Yeah, of course. No, tell us, because I want to know. What do we do with this?
If you tell a young East African to not buy an iPhone,
yes, he will refuse.
And this is the thing, they may refuse.
They will.
Or you may find one like me who is going to hold the phone for like 8 years until it can't work anymore.
But yet you have the last laptop.
No, this is not the last one. This is like a 2020 laptop.
Maybe not the last
but
one.
this is my first laptop also too. Like, this is the first ever laptop.
Yeah.
And but that's not the point. Like, when about argue about what we use. But what I'm trying to say is, when we think about, when I said climate change is connected to everything, is when a young person who makes TikToks and depends on TikToks, when you tell them not to buy a phone to make those TikToks, and then another young person somewhere in France, somewhere in Germany, somewhere in a developed nation is buying the latest gadget, has
5 phones and 6
thank you
smartphones.
very much.
Yeah.
They have a phone, they have a tablet, they have
they have revenue.
Thank you very much. And now it's paying. We have also seen TikTok is racist. There's only African, I think there are very few African countries that get paid on TikTok. And you get what I'm trying to say. And on all the shortcomings they have as young people in Uganda, born in East Africa, then you add on of do not get the latest phone to...
Yeah, they will refuse. So consumption is about to increase, not to decrease.
Thank you. And my point is, it is you maximizing what you have, the gadget you have, until you are sure you cannot use it anymore. Because we have been brainwashed that the iPhone 13 does not work like the iPhone, the iPhone, what's the newest iPhone?
I don't know.
16, 17? I don't know. But the newest iPhone is better than the iPhone.
Previous one.
Yes,
we have been told it's better than the previous one.
Which is not very true. It's not true at all.
But what is true is that the shareholders of Apple are so powerful, then they can impose that.
But you see, that is why also when we are going against polluters, we need to go against cooperation very aggressively.
Very straight.
Very aggressively. If you look at an injustice. Today we're talking about the genocide in Palestine and how Coca-Cola is, every coin you buy with Coca-Cola, they take a percentage to Israel to bomb Palestine.
Yes.
So we have to be cautious as young people to be like, okay, when I do this, how many other lives am I affecting? When I do this, how many other communities am I affecting? like I said, this is the first laptop I ever owned. You understand? But right now, and it was a donation, and I like that I have the laptop because it makes my life easy. But I'm very lazy to even go and buy another laptop. Not because I cannot afford the laptop, but because I am like, I know what making one laptop means to a child in Congo. I have worked with Congolese that have been affected. Well, we have some here who are in exile because of talking about what is happening in Congo. You understand? And we are in a generation where you have to take it upon yourself to be very, very self-aware and to stand for something as a young person. Because trust me, the older millennials, the baby boomers, and the Gen Xers don't care about us because they have lived their life. And they're going to die and leave us this planet. But it's up to you and your children and your children's children. And they destroyed the planet. Let's save it. Let's do whatever we can. Let's reduce. If you think of, if I buy 2 bottles of water and I'm going to pollute the environment with plastics, then just have a water bottle with you. If you think of, if I buy another phone, I'm going to create havoc in Congo or in another country, then have one phone for like 5 years and be like, for 5 years, I'm going to have this phone, come rain, come shine. And
I want us to pivot this conversation to what is happening now in our communities. I will start with an example of Namamve, which is now an industrial park. It used to be a forest. And I think the first industry there, the first factory was Coca-Cola. They were saying that to put a factory in Namamve, you have to plant trees equivalent to what you have cut. We don't know where these trees are being planted. We don't know where that ended. Yeah, but we shall be coming back to that.
Let me first debunk the theory of planting trees from cutting trees. It's not the same thing. When you cut an already grown tree and you plant a seedling,
a new one,
that doesn't mean that the CO2 is going to move from this tree to this one. That's not how it works. So I need to debunk that theory because so many of these corporations, I've seen Total plant trees, million trees.
They love that.
And
greenwashing.
Yeah, it's greenwashing in itself. So let's leave trees alone. Planting trees is good, but we have used it so much as greenwashing and it's being abused.
You have watered down what they are doing in Ethiopia. I think they have planted a billion plus. They did plant, they are having a huge tree planting campaign in Ethiopia. So I think you have washed that down. Anyway, we are going to come back and talk about the present.
Yes.
How this crisis looks right now.
Definitely. Yeah. And one thing we want to know is which government is actually taking in consideration what she's saying to us right now. Which one is the best East African governments on those questions? Speak to you after the break. Thank you so much.